by her lawyers that she could have been interviewed in a private setting by investigators on both sides and get her testimony that way. But I thought she did just fine.
Are you pleased with Rachel Mitchell's questioning?
I think she did exactly what I hoped she would do, and that is in a dignified and professional way, ask questions to get information. I would say most of the comments made by our friends across the aisle struck me as more political. They didn't really ask questions, seeking information. We obviously are interested in getting the truth here, and unfortunately, this is a hyper-politicized environment, no doubt about it.
Senator, it seemed towards
Senator Graham has a few things he wants to say.
then I'll ask you, she seemed towards the end, Ms. Mitchell, to be questioning the political motives of Dr. Ford's attorneys. By raising questions about
here's what I can say.
She was
I'm really upset that they knew about this in August and never told anybody. I'm really upset that Dianne Feinstein believed this was a credible allegation, that you wouldn't do Mr. Judge Kavanugh the service of saying, I've got this, what's your side of the story? Turn it over to the committee so we could have something not this close to the midterms. Did they say that she wasn't sure we were willing to go out there? That's a bunch of bull. I don't know what they told Ms. Ford, but we were willing to go to California. We were told she couldn't fly. All I can say is that we're 40-something days away from the election, and their goal, not Ms. Ford's goal, is to lay this past the midterms so they can win the Senate and never allow Trump to fill the seat. I believe that now more than ever. I don't know who paid for a polygraph, but somebody did. And here's what I'm more convinced of. The friends on the other side set it up to be just the way it is. I feel ambushed as the majority. We're going to hear from Mr. Kavanugh, Judge Kavanugh, and I've been a judge, a prosecutor, and a defense attorney. And here's what I'll tell you. When it comes to where it happened, I still don't know. I don't know when it happened. She said she's 100% certain it did happen. I bet you Judge Kavanagh will say I'm 100% sure I didn't do it. The people named say they don't know what Ms. Ford's talking about. She can't tell us how she got home and how she got there. And that's the facts I'm left with. A nice lady who has come forward to tell a hard story that's uncorroborated, and this is enough. God help anybody else that gets nominated. Based on what I heard today, you could not get a search warrant or an arrest warrant because you don't know the location, you don't know the time, and you don't have any corroboration. As to Ms. Mitchell, that's what I hoped she would do. I heard a bunch of speeches from a bunch of politicians who politicized this from day one, who've been lying in wait for a political purpose, not Ms. Ford, but certainly them, making a bunch of speeches, and Ms. Mitchell methodically went through the facts of what happened that day, leading up to that day, and how we find ourselves here. So from my point of view, I'm pleased with what I saw.
Senator, what you laid out about your own background as a prosecutor, defense attorney, as a judge. Did you, sitting up there, find Dr. Ford to be credible?
I didn't find her allegations to be corroborated against Mr. Kavanagh. I don't doubt something happened to her, but she is saying it's Brett Kavanaugh, but she can't tell me the house, she can tell me the city, she can't tell me the month of the year. He's saying I didn't do it. So here's what you do. When you have a emotional accusation and an emotional denial, use the rule of law. The presumption of innocence attaches to the person accused. You have to give them notice in terms of time and location. You ask, is there anybody to verify this? And when you give names, all of them go the other way. Having said that, what I think about Ms. Ford, very competent, accomplished lady. Something happened, I don't know what, but you're asking me to say it was Brett Kavanaugh, and I don't know when it happened, where it happened. He said it did happen, but I would say this. I thought it was a good suggestion for her to go talk to somebody to work through this. That's actually
not all an argument for a more fulsome investigation.
If you really believe we needed an investigation of this, why didn't you tell us in August? So listen. The FBI is going to tell us what? What house are they going to go to? What city are they going to go to? Who are they going to talk to? Because they can't tell us the month, barely the year. So this is all delay. So here's where they're going, Mr. Judge. He says, I didn't do it. I don't know what she's talking about. They want to bring him in, trash him out, and call 25 people. Well, then say that he's an abuser, and guess what? We'll be past the midterm. I'm not going to reward people for playing a political game. I think with her life, she is just as much a victim of this as I think Brett Kavanaugh, because somebody betrayed her trust. And we know who she gave the letter to. And the people that betrayed her trust, they owe her an
Do
apology.
you still want to vote on Friday? You still want to vote on Friday? Jeff, I don't know if you can still hear me.
Senator Lindsey Graham, obviously fired up. He's been very passionate about this issue, and particularly over the last few days, he feels like Brett Kavanaugh has gotten a very bad deal in the way this has worked out with regard to when the evidence was given, and all of the passion that surrounds the desire for an FBI investigation he feels should have happened when these allegations were first made, and it should have been handled in a completely different process.
Right here, what about that charge that this is really all about delay and getting past the midterms, and all of this delay about getting to the hearing, about flying in, about negotiating, is really all about November 6th?
Well, I think it's significantly part of it that it's about delay. The delay is one of the ways that the Democrats win on this. If you get past the midterms, you don't know what's going to happen. Witnesses might come forward. You might until there's a vote. It's all good for the Democrats because you can't move the nomination forward without one. The case remains open. Other people have come forward, as we've seen in the last 24 or 36 hours. This is going, or all week, really. And moreover, the Democrats have a good talking point. Calling for an FBI investigation in political terms is unmistakably a good talking point. Now, it overlooks a lot, and it certainly overlooks the fact that the committee staff has sought to investigate this in the way you would expect, and actually, committees like this one, the Judiciary Committee, have investigators, and we know that effort has been stonewalled, at least, or certainly not cooperated with by the minority. But all that aside, it's a good talking point, and the longer they can keep it going, the better it is for them.
I think back to the frustration in the early stages of the first days of this hearing, when we saw the effort to disrupt the hearing and to derail the hearing right off the bat. There was anger at Chuck Schumer that he hadn't done enough to push back on this whole thing. And you look at where we are today, he has to feel like this effort has been worth it for them, at least at this point, where we wait for Brett Kavanaugh to
Which will be an important part of this day. Let's bring in Karl Rove, former senior advisor to George W. Bush. Karl, your thoughts on this day and what we've seen transpire?
Well, we saw an emotional and credible witness. We saw Miss Mitchell, the designated questioner by the Republicans. She kept the Republicans out of trouble by not having 10 men line up to confront this woman claiming to be the victim of a horrific sexual abuse. But on the other hand, she didn't put Dr. Ford in much difficulty herself until the very end. I think the point that she made at the end that there are 4 other people, 3 men, Kavanaugh, Judge PJ, and a good friend of yours now, Leland Kaiser. Those are the 4 people you remember being there. They don't confirm, corroborate what you had to say. I think she scored some points on the issue of leaking. I think Brett was absolutely right. The Democrats want this as a talking point. They could have handled this in July and August by turning it over to the FBI and having everybody interviewed confidentially and sharing that among the staff and make a decision. But now that it's become public, and it was deliberately made public, probably by a staff member for Dianne Feinstein, this thing has become a Democrat cause célèbre. It helps them with the electorate. It keeps the focus on something they want. And if they succeed in delaying it, so much the better. But even if they don't, they occupy valuable space in the weeks leading up to the midterm election.
So, Karl, given the fact that we are only halfway through, it's halftime at this point, and we could all be talking in a very different way after Brett Kavanaugh testifies, which we expect will get underway shortly. If you are sitting at the White House, as you used to do, in the West Wing, and you're watching this play out, what are you thinking right now about this nominee?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. We're at halftime, and not only that, but we're all junkies. We're watching this. We're watching every single moment of this. The American people are going to perceive this in 2 or 3 or 4 snippets, if you will, a couple from Dr. Ford and a couple from Judge Kavanugh. And the question is going to be, how do they evaluate those? And there's going to be no clear winner in all of this. Let's be clear about this. There are going to be people who look at Dr. Ford and say, credible, I believe her. There are people that are going to look at Brett Kavanaugh and say, he's credible, I believe him. But they're going to evaluate this whole thing by looking at snippets. So the best moments of each, and we've seen the best moments for Dr. Ford. We're now about ready to see the best moments for Judge Kavanaugh over the course of the afternoon.
How much does this, the #1 viewer, President Trump, factor into this? Or is this all today about those wavering Republicans and the vote on this nomination that's yet to come?
Well, my sense is it's more the latter than the former, because I think the president is sitting there saying, if I can get this across the line, I'd rather get this across the line than to go back to the starting board on this. And we're talking about, we've been talking about Collins and Murkowski, Flake and Corker, but there may be other members out there that either on the committee or off the Judiciary Committee who will form an opinion after the end of this afternoon that could be supportive of Kavanaugh or could be undermined. We won't know until it's all over. That's why this is so important. The Republicans have the two thresholds. They cannot lose a single member of the 11 members of the Republican majority on the Judiciary Committee, and among all 51 Republicans, they cannot lose 2. Otherwise, the nomination goes down. My gut tells me that this was so far enough to keep the Judiciary Committee in support of Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh, however, is the way his performance is going to guarantee whether or not there are 51 Republican votes or 50 plus Vice President Mike Pence to confirm his nomination.
Karl Rove in Austin, Texas. Karl, thanks. We should point out, obviously, that committee vote, as we pointed out before, with Judge Clarence Thomas, no recommendation. They still voted him in to the Supreme Court. That could happen again, but it is about counting heads.
Hard to underestimate the importance of the next few hours for Brett Kavanaugh. He is about to walk in there, sit down at that table moments away, and take on really the most important goal of his life at this moment, and whether or not he can save himself. So we will see. Stay tuned for that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with our continuing coverage of the hearing of Brett Kavanaugh after this.
I know that every single time that I suit up, there is a chance that that's the last time. Miles an hour, that's where I feel normal. I might be crazy, but I'm not stupid. Having an annuity tells me my retirement is protected.
Annuities can provide protected income for life. Learn more at retireyourrisk.org.
I lost 25 pounds on Jenny Craig.
From a top diet 8 years straight comes the all-new Rapid Results by Jenny Craig. Lose up to 16 pounds in just 4 weeks with food you love. Eat 6 times a day with no prepping or cooking.
You have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner ready to go. It's all laid out for you.
So you can get on with your day and watch the pounds melt off.
Man up, give them a call.
Start Rapid Results and lose 16 pounds for $16 plus the cost of food, and get $120 in free food.
We decided to go with Bath Fitter after doing a lot of research.
Yeah, we loved how they could install a new tub right over the old one without tearing our bathroom apart.
Yeah, what we didn't expect was to be blown away by the quality. And that's what happened. They showed up in the morning, and by the end of the day, we had this absolutely beautiful new bathtub. It was better than we could have even imagined.
And it's guaranteed for life.
I actually love our bathroom now.
Book your free in-home consultation today. Call or visit bathfitter.com.
You know, I never realized how much work goes into taking care of horses.
You think that's hard? Try taking care of thousands of animals at the same time.
Go ahead. Think bigger.
Say there was a new kind of place, the perfect place for the everyday things you need to take care of around the house. The squeaky hinges and burned out bulbs, the toilets that run and faucets that don't. That perfect place wouldn't be a warehouse. It'd be just the right size. It would be an Ace, around the block, what you need in stock with people who know their stuff. Welcome to the home convenience store.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
Yes, we are twins. When I went on to Ancestry, I just put in the name of my parents and my grandparents. I was getting all these leads, and I was going back generation after generation. You start to see documents, and you see signatures of people that you've never met. I mean, you don't know these people, but you feel like you do. You get connected to them. I wish that I could get into a time machine and go back 100 years, 200 years, and just meet these people. Being on Ancestry, it just made me feel like I belong somewhere.
Discover your story. Start searching for free now at Ancestry.com.
For those who are driven by purpose, who are building others instead of just wealth, giving back and never giving up, TIAA will help you live your definition of success. Whether you have $500 or $5 million, investing, advice, banking, retirement. TIAA. Start today at TIAA.org.
This is a Fox News alert. The Senate Judiciary Committee is now in recess. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford finished with her testimony. Emotional at times. Judge Brett Kavanugh up next at the top of the hour, and it's going to be a big deal. Mike Emanuel joins us from Capitol Hill, right outside that hearing room. Mike, set the stage about what's going to happen.
Well, Brett, good afternoon. We expect that Judge Brett Kavanugh will say that he was not a perfect teenager, but that he did not do what Professor Ford has accused him of. He's never sexually assaulted anybody. I talked to Republican sources here on the Hill, and they say it is all in Judge Kavanaugh's hands right now. They're saying that Professor Ford was a compelling witness emotionally. They say there were holes in her testimony. There were some factual errors and factual omissions, and so they're not sure how that'll play, but they do acknowledge that the emotional aspect of her testimony does work with the public. And so now they're saying they're hoping, Republicans are, that Judge Kavanaugh will be equally compelling, if not more, and then it may be a matter of what senators have to determine in terms of who they believe at that point. We do expect Judge Kavanaugh to come down this hallway behind me in the next 15 or 20 minutes or so to have his big moment in front of the committee and obviously in front of the nation. We'll see if he has anything to say on the whim. Probably not. He will probably save his talking with the lawmakers and with the questioning this afternoon, Brett.
Mike, real quickly, the questioning, I assume, is going to be a little bit different. And not, obviously, Ms. Mitchell is not involved in the 5-minute increments laying the predicate as she was doing. This will be senators either attacking him or rehabilitating him. Which side they're on?
Well, you're absolutely right. And obviously a concern for Republican sources is the fact that they think there are a number of Democrats on this committee who are going to run for president. Klobuchar, Harris from California, Cory Booker from New Jersey, and so they are wondering whether they're going to try to make this a made-for-TV moment that could be a launch of their 2020 campaigns. But bottom line, you're correct that Republicans will look to prop him up, look to pump him up a bit, and defend his integrity, defend his name as he tries to do that before the nation.
All right, Mike, thank you.
John Roberts standing by at the White House. John, wanting to check in with you and see if there's any new developments there in terms of what the reaction is to what we've seen so far.
Well, the president's been watching all of the proceedings, both on Air Force One when he was on his way down here from New York City, and he's been in the residence ever since, watching the proceedings as well. As for what's coming up, White House officials told me a couple of minutes ago that Judge Kavanaugh, when he appears before the committee, has to be fiery. He has to be consistent. You know, Martha, you had the interview with him on Monday. I think there's a sense here at the White House that he has to be more forceful, a little more emotional than he was Monday night during that interview, because this is his one chance to try to win over enough Republicans to get through the committee. But even if it doesn't get through the committee, it could go to the whole Senate. But it has to win over enough Republicans with what he says this afternoon to get it across the finish line. In terms of Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, officials here at the White House told me that there were a lot of inconsistencies in some of the things that she had said. There were a lot of gaps in her recollection of the actual event, but that she was very emotional in the telling of the story. So here you have a difference between the emotion of telling a story and then the actual facts. Was there any evidence presented? Officials here at the White House don't think that, other than her recollections, there was any evidence presented, but she did come across in her recollection of what she could remember as very credible. So Judge Kavanaugh has to probably have the interview of his life if he hopes to continue going with this process and get confirmed for the Senate. Now, politically, confirmed rather for the Supreme Court, not the Senate. Now, politically, if this doesn't happen with Judge Kavanaugh, I mean, they have a fallback position. They have a list that still has got about 20 other judges on it that they could pick from. But getting another nominee before the Senate to do all of the rounds and then hearings before the midterms, impossible. Likely wouldn't happen before the new Congress is seated in January, and then we don't know what the makeup of it is going to be. So that's why the president is so anxious to get Kavanaugh through, because if Kavanaugh doesn't happen, it's not going to happen until the new year. And if Democrats take control of Congress, if they particularly take control of the Senate, you might not get another Supreme Court justice until after the 2020 election. So there is so much for the president and for Republicans riding on the next few hours of testimony in the judiciary that everyone here, no question, on the edge of their seats to see how this goes. And Judge Kavanaugh has to bring it, or it's not going to happen. Martha?
Very true, very true. And you know, if John's still with us, is any reaction that you got from the decision to have Ms. Mitchell deliver those questions? Were they happy with that? Do you have a sense of that?
I think the sense of it is probably that, you know, it was a good idea, at least in terms of optics go, because your alternative was, and I think Democrats really wanted to see this, 11 middle to late-aged white men questioning a woman about a potential sex crime. So the idea of bringing her in was, I think, one that the White House appreciated and applauded, and I think many Republicans did as well, and now Lindsey Graham certainly did. In terms of the execution of how it went, I think you'd probably get a variety of opinion on that.
John Roberts, live on the North Lawn. John, thanks. Back with the panel. You know, Britt, I've received and seen now, I think, 3 fundraising emails from Democrats off of the testimony so far that we've seen. I mean, obviously, this is a political moment.
I think it was Cookie Roberts, when I was at ABC, used to say, you can't take the politics out of politics. And this is an unmistakably political process. It's a little unseemly of the matter of this gravity to see this kind of, you know, fundraising off of something like this, but that is how it works. And it does, you know, raise anew the question of whether this is a good faith effort to get to the truth about this, or whether this is just, you know, the use of this to try to block a nominee, please the base, hurt Trump, keep the Supreme Court from going in Democrats' view out of balance. You know, whether it's really a serious truth-telling, truth-finding operation. I think a lot of people look at this and think that it's not.
Chris, your thoughts as we wait for Kavanaugh to come into the room? Obviously, as we've said, got a big moment ahead.
You know, I covered some trials earlier in my career, and I had a couple of veterans say to me, don't make judgments in the middle of the trial, because the prosecution brings its case first and they make it as damaging as possible, and you'll sit there halfway through the trial and say, this defendant is cooked. There's just no chance at all, and then the defense brings its case. I don't think that the Republicans did as good a job as they could have done or should have done in this chance. He's a man of towering intellect, towering accomplishment. He's going to give his opportunity. There are problems with Christine Blasey Ford's story. There are no facts. There was an indelible memory, very powerfully stated on her part, but there are no facts. And let's wait and see what Brett Kavanaugh has to say. We're in the middle of the trial. You don't make your judgment till the end.
And that last 5 minutes with Ms. Mitchell, with the friend saying she doesn't remember it, Leland, and they're talking. I mean, that could be something that Kavanaugh jumps on in some of this testimony. We'll see. Brett Kavanaugh will be sitting down, answering questions from senators, giving an opening statement. You'll see it right here on Fox News Channel's continuing coverage.
We're in Memphis, Tennessee, a city with one of the highest increases of women-owned businesses in the U.S.
It's really this constant juxtaposition when you're a mom and entrepreneur.
With more businesses starting every day, how do they plan for their financial wellness?
I am very mindful of the sacrifices that I made, so I have to manage my time wisely.
Plan your financial life with Prudential. Bring your challenges.
Your life wasn't meant to be lived under a bushel basket. Neither is your faith. On October 4th, bring your Bible to school. Learn more at bringyourbible.org.
People with type 2 diabetes are excited about the potential of once-weekly Ozempic. In a study with Ozempic, a majority of adults lowered their blood sugar and reached an A1C of less than 7 and maintained it.
Under 7?
And you may lose weight. In the same one-year study, adults lost on average up to 12 pounds.
Up to 12 pounds?
A 2-year study showed that Ozempic does not increase the risk of major cardiovascular events like heart attack, stroke, or death.
No increased risk?
Ozempic should not be the first medicine for treating diabetes or for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Do not share needles or pens. Don't reuse needles. Do not take Ozempic if you have a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer, multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if you are allergic to Ozempic. Stop taking Ozempic and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, itching, rash, or trouble breathing. Serious side effects may happen, including pancreatitis. Tell your doctor if you have diabetic retinopathy or vision changes. Taking Ozempic with a sulfonylurea or insulin may increase the risk for low blood sugar. Common side effects are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach pain, and constipation. Some side effects can lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
I discovered the potential with Ozempic.
Ask your healthcare provider if Ozempic is right for you. This is my doctor. This is my grocer. These are my back roads. Those are my heroes. That was my high school. And this is my privilege.
Since 2005, Dish and our partners have helped bring emergency communications access to disaster areas across the country, so families, friends, and first responders can organize, mobilize, and connect.
I'm really upset that they knew about this in August and never told anybody. I'm really upset if Dianne Feinstein believed this was a credible allegation, that you wouldn't do Mr. Judge Kavanugh the service of saying, I've got this, what's your side of the story? Turn it over to the committee so we could have something not this close to the midterms. When they say that she wasn't sure we were willing to go out there, that's a bunch of bull. I don't know what they told Ms. Ford, but we were willing to go to California. We were told she couldn't fly. All I can say is that we're 40-something days away from the election, and their goal, not Ms. Ford's goal, is to delay this, pass the midterms, so they can win the Senate and never allow Trump to fill the seat.
Senator Lindsey Graham just a few moments ago saying what he thinks about the motivation of Democrats behind all of this. A few other Republicans weighing in. Senator Orrin Hatch asked if he thought that Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's testimony was credible, and he said it's not uncredible. Senator Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia, do you think Ford seems credible as a credible witness? I think her testimony, quote, is riveting. Shelley Moore Capito, by the way, a Republican senator who went to Holton Arms, the school Dr. Christine Blasey Ford attended, has not really weighed in how she's going to vote as of yet. A number of Republicans not definitively saying until this hearing is over how they're going to cast their vote.
I think you can say that a lot of Republicans share Lindsey Graham's feeling in terms of the procedure and the process in all of this. They are very angry about the way this was handled, and they feel like there was an opportunity to really bring this forward, to have an investigation, but they feel gypped. You know, they feel like this has been a process that nobody should be proud of, and maybe that's the case. Judge Andrew Napolitano is standing by.
Comment if this is zoomed in too much.
Kavanaugh's testimony here. You know, Judge, your thoughts, you know, when you look back on the first half of this, what are your thoughts in terms of how successful the groundwork was laid by Rachel Mitchell, and whether or not there was any benefit from it from the Republicans' perspective?
I think the Republicans made a grave error
not necessarily in choosing Mrs. Mitchell, but in having her craft her questioning the way she did. To me, someone who's been living in the world of questions and answers for 45 years, it sounded more like a deposition in a civil case where you are looking for information and you want the witness to talk rather than the
comment if I need to zoom out,
which would limit
please.
the witness's testimony and undermine her credibility. Quite frankly, I think they should have had Lindsey Graham do the interrogation. You just saw him summarize for Peter Ducey in about 4 minutes what he could have done in a couple of hours. So,
Judge, let me just push back from another perspective, which is they didn't attack this witness. It's a very sensitive thing. Towards the end of her questioning, she really went after the other people who were there who say they weren't there and don't remember what Dr. Christine Blasey Ford remembers. And she laid some and put some holes in the credibility of whether she could fly or not, whether this was a delay, who paid for the polygraph. You know, for somebody looking at that says it was not a no harm, no foul to Republicans.
but the Republicans are in a far deeper hole now, not the Republicans, Judge Kavanugh, than before Dr. Ford testified, because the questioner really did very, very little to undermine her credibility. In fact, she fortified it by letting her give amiable, rational, emotional, attractive, reasonable explanations at almost every opportunity. I realize how delicate this is, and I understand, of course, the reasons for which they chose Rachel Mitchell, but I don't think she succeeded.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like they had one arm tied behind their back. Not that this is a fight, but there is a way to ask these questions in a respectful, courteous manner and to lay out the areas where there is no corroboration. And when she got into that, and towards the end, as Brett was saying, with the question of her friend Leland and why her friend Leland, who's the only other woman that she places at the scene of that party, why Leland didn't say, could have happened, I don't remember. She said, it didn't happen. And the reason that she gave for that is that she's going through medical issues. I mean, Judge, what would your response be to that?
Well, my thought is you don't ask a question without knowing the answer first, and Dr. Ford's answer was a compassionate one. I don't know what my friend remembers, but I know she's had serious medical issues. I'm glad she's addressing them. Look, this is not, I have a tendency, I'll admit my faults, I have a tendency to look at this as if it were still a courtroom. This is not a courtroom. We are not looking for the truth. This is political, it's not legal. The tools of the legal profession are being used. But the result here will be produced by the national impression 3 or 4 hours from now about who is more likely to have told the truth, Dr. Ford or Judge Kavanugh. He's deep in a hole now. He has the intellectual ability and I believe the personal passion to dig himself out of that hole. But the hole is deeper now than it was this morning because of the tepid manner in which the witness was examined.
And before Judge Kavanugh does his defense and stands up for himself, you're saying right now that this testimony today possibly moves some votes away from Kavanugh.
I say at this point, and Chris Wallace is right, you have to wait until all the testimony is in. But in the middle of the afternoon, it's a disaster for the White House.
Judge, thank you.
All right, let's go to Shannon. Shannon, listening to what the judge said there, it's not a court of law, but it is a credibility case. So you have to make the case that you're credible or make the case that she is not credible. And, as the judge said, he thinks that they took some steps back there.
Yeah, and it's nothing like a traditional courtroom where you have rules of evidence, you can impeach witnesses, all the things that would help you build a case. It is the court of public opinion, and there are just a handful of senators at this point that this is playing to. Those are the keys that are going to decide this whole thing. We did get some nuggets, though, from her in the questioning of Rachel Mitchell that was very understated. We got more about the timeline, so we know that she sent this letter to Dianne Feinstein July 30th. She says they had a phone call the first week of August. We know that Senator Feinstein met with the nominee August 20th, so she knew about it well. She had a phone call with the accuser at that point. His hearing wasn't until September 4th. Went through the whole hearing, it never came up. Dianne Feinstein didn't go to the closed session that they had following the public hearing, and so the very day the committee was originally scheduled to vote on him, this letter went public. So we have to
I think if you focus on the process and how Democrats handled it, it's a win for Republicans. They can easily say this is all political. They're trying to get it past the midterms. If you focus on the allegations and her testimony solely, you know, she had a pretty good morning credibility-wise, even if you ask Republican senators. One thing, Chris mentioned that the letter came out before the nomination was announced. That is true, that Judge Brett Kavanaugh was selected on the 9th of July, and she sends the letter on the 6th. But on the 5th, President Trump had selected down to 3 finalists, Brett Kavanaugh being among the 3. So the timing, I mean, his name was in the small circle of possibilities.
I don't think it makes a great deal of difference politically whether she waited until after he'd officially been named or not. The whole she came out to try to stop him in anticipation that he would be the nominee. So that, I think that's unmistakably true. And of course there is the question of whether the Democrats didn't react with more credence to what she was saying and why they did what they did, and that all goes to the question of good faith versus bad faith, and that argument can go on forever. But we're still back to where we started, and that is this process has been so ugly and so nasty and leading to this regrettable day that nobody gets out of this in better shape, in my judgment, really, and institutionally, nobody.
Take a quick break. We're going to take 1 minute, and we'll be right back. And they'll be getting ready to go after this. Stay with us.
I'd like to take a moment to address my fellow veterans, because I know so many of you have served our country honorably. One of the benefits that we as a country give you as a veteran is the eligibility for a VA loan for up to 100% of your home's value. If you need cash for your family, call New Day USA. With automatic authority from the VA, we can say yes when banks say no. Give us a call.
Call now, 1-855-376-1361.
Stop yanking. And get cranking. The No Yank Tank. Only at Duluth stores and DuluthTrading.com.
Diabetes will never slow me down. I need long-lasting energy and hunger control without spikes. Extend bars are scientifically designed to help control blood sugar for up to 6 to 9 hours. Taste and feel the difference today. Take back control with Extend.
The word education means to lead forth. But which way is forth? How do you know you're going in the right direction? At Hillsdale College, we understand education to be the pursuit of the highest answer to that question. Discovering the right way by reading the greatest books by the greatest minds in history. Coming to see the meaning of the good, the true, and the beautiful. This is the way forth. This is education.
Millions of people across the country are losing weight and improving their health. What do we all have in common? Nutrisystem.
Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches overall in your first month. It's your favorite foods made healthier.
No counting, no measuring, no weigh-ins.
Order your 28-day plan and save 40% off every program.
Join the millions who have lost weight and improved their health. Go online right now.
Order Nutrisystem now and for a limited time. Save 40% off every program, plus get probiotic shakes free.
My longtime client Mark asked me to help his daughter. Abby took a job in Chicago and wanted financial advice. We talked about her goals and set up a savings strategy so she can enjoy life now and start planning for tomorrow. I'm looking forward to working with Abby and helping her reach her goals, like I've been doing with her dad for years. With the right financial advisor, life can be brilliant.
More quality inclusions than any other resorts on the planet. Save up to 65%. Call 1-800-SANDALS.
More than ever, we need Fox Nation from the brand you trust.
Exclusive content,
access,
and experiences.
Some of us you know well, and some of us you're going to get to know better.
Find out more
at FoxNation.com.
Fox Nation, opinion done right.
This is a Fox News Alert continuing coverage of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. We heard earlier from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, his accuser. We're looking live at the hallway there, and Mike Emanuel. There's Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina, and we are going to see momentarily Judge Brett Kavanaugh walking through these hallways, getting to his seat where he will stand up and defend himself and what he has said under oath already that he did not do, and he was not there, and he did not know about.
Yeah, we are expecting he's going to walk through that hallway in just a couple of minutes. They're supposed to get underway at 3 p.m. and, you know, the activity is definitely beginning. Everybody's filing back into the room, so it does look like we're just moments away from this extraordinary moment for him. He has to be nervous as he heads into this, and because, you know, he's a sitting judge in the second highest court in the land right now. So if this doesn't go well for him, he's not only going to have a problem with the job that he wants, but also potentially with the job that he has now. So the consequences for him personally, for his family, are just enormous.
Which is fascinating because you think about what Sheldon Whitehouse said in this hearing, and he said, I am not going to relent even if he gets on the court. In other words, moving forward with impeachment proceedings, perhaps, afterwards. And Marie, that is quite something for Democrats to say, we don't care if this happens, we're going to continue to fight. If he can't be on the Supreme Court, he can't be on the second highest court in the land.
That's right, and I think this afternoon does not just depend on how Brett Kavanaugh does, it depends on how the Democrats do. Because right now, they are in a position where people have seen a witness that appears credible, she's made very serious allegations, and if the Democrats come in and they are measured and they look like they're just looking for the truth, I think that will go a long way with the American people. If they do what I think some of their tendencies are, and they showboat, or they bring up things that even have nothing to do with Kavanaugh but have to do with Donald Trump. You heard Senator Hirono bring up separating children at the border. Look, those issues make me angry too. They have no place in this hearing. The more they make it seem like this is just anti-Trump, I think the more it will hurt their efforts to say Kavanaugh has a serious credibility problem. They need to keep these issues separate. They need to focus on Kavanaugh or risk making it look incredibly partisan.
But you know, the horse is already out of the barn on that. Senator Hirono has already said that she doesn't care what happened that night. What she cares about is based on his judicial decisions in the past, that he's made in the past, she thinks he's guilty. Senator Coons has already said, essentially regardless of what he says, the burden is on him to prove that he did not do this. We go in with that as a backdrop.
In the first confirmation hearing, Lindsey Graham pointed out the fact that Donald Trump nominated Brett Kavanaugh on July 9th at 9 p.m. And by 10:18, an hour and 18 minutes later, 6 major Democrats, including the top Democrat in the Senate, Schumer, the top Democrat in the House, Pelosi, had all said they oppose his nomination. So there are people who was like, verdict today, trial tomorrow. We were through the looking glass in terms of the reaction of some Democrats. And you heard earlier, just after the first part of the hearing, Richard Blumenthal, I believe her. You might want to wait and actually hear what Brett Kavanaugh has to say. Apparently not.
Right now, does he have the votes to get through?
No, I would think he does not. I mean, well, listen, there's something we don't know, but I think that there are a handful, I think, genuinely undecided senators who are watching to see which way this goes and to determine whether they can vote for him. If this ends up being kind of a standoff, if he comes across as roughly as credible as she does, I think that helps him a lot. But that doesn't mean that. But this political atmosphere is not to be underestimated, and you saw it reflected perfectly in the way the Republicans chose to handle the questioning. They didn't do any of it themselves, as we know. They had a woman who treated her in a very polite and gentle way throughout, and as others on this panel have pointed out, they probably pulled all kinds of punches on that. That's tribute to the atmosphere. So, and the atmosphere is a huge player in this, and I think, in political terms, it'll be hard for some Republicans to go against that. We'll see.
You know, Britt, when you look at this politically, as you said the other night when we were talking, this is really, it's about so many other issues. And the fact that Chris brought up that the decisions were already made politically on this candidate, on this nominee, long before we got here. So this, in many ways, as tragic as her experience was, and we don't know exactly what happened, we just heard her story, it's a sidebar, but it's the issue that is being used to drive the wedge through this nomination.
Because if you drill down, the underlying issue that undergirds all of these struggles over Supreme Court nominations of people who appear to be judicial conservatives, particularly when the balance of the court as it is perceived is in play. It comes down to one issue: abortion. Abortion, it's been a 45-year-old decision. We have been fighting about it ever since. It failed utterly to resolve the question in the eyes of many people. It's the most enduring moral issue of our time. It's split the nation horribly. It was one of the worst things the Supreme Court has ever done. Even if you like the result, the effect of it has been...
And you said we wouldn't be here today if it was known that he was determined to protect
Right. If he'd written a law review article or made a speech in which he indicated that he was strongly in favor of supporting Roe versus Wade, none of this would be happening in my judgment.
Just saw Senator Grassley, Senator Graham, there's Senator Cornyn walking back in, Senator Cruz behind him, senators filing back in to the committee room, and we are going to see Brett Kavanaugh soon. There you see Senator Jeff Flake, who gave a speech on the Senate floor and said no matter what happens, there's going to be doubt over this. Senator Flake is obviously not running for re-election in Arizona. Martha McSally is running on the Republican side for that. Kirsten Sinema on the Democratic side. And you have a situation where there are a couple of senators who are not going to be in the Senate after this session. Bob Corker from Tennessee, who may be looking at this differently. And they have both said that they're on the fence as far as this vote.
Which really brings the number into big question. I mean, there are a lot of people on the Republican side. The Democrats, we already know what they're going to do. If every single Republican voted in lockstep on this nomination, it would get through no matter what happens. But there's probably 10, 12, as you said before, people who are on the fence. So this is a very, very open question in terms of the politics.
Corker said 20. He said, I believe there are 20 people who have an open mind and are going to watch this hearing and then make up their minds. And you have to ask yourself, take Susan Collins, a fiercely independent, moderate Republican, very strong on the Me Too movement, very upset when Donald Trump issued his tweet suggesting, why didn't she tell somebody 35 years ago? Without talking to her, I know that she was deeply moved by what you heard this morning. It's going to be hard to get her back in the fold and say, no, I'm going to vote. And remember, this isn't like putting Kavanaugh in jail. This isn't a matter of reasonable doubt.
Let's listen in to the hallway here. There's Brett Kavanaugh walking in. Imagine this moment.
Let me just quickly say, this isn't a matter of whether proving beyond a reasonable doubt. This is whether to give him a job promotion to one of the most powerful lifetime jobs in the world. So that's kind of a tough standard.
Well, I can say, too, in talking to the Collins staffers and other Republicans who are very much in conversation with her because they need to know where she's going, she's been very off-put by the level of threats, which a number of parties in this case have gotten: death threats, rape threats. What's been coming into her office has been so vulgar, a lot of it we can't report on the air. There's been money raised against her. She says that she felt like these groups are trying to bribe her. And a lot of the folks on the GOP side prior to this testimony this morning have said she's actually been driven back into the arms of the GOP because so much of what came into her office she found so offensive in this process.
Behind Judge Kavanaugh, you'll see Don McGahn, White House counsel, and the aides to Judge Kavanaugh we've seen sit behind him before in testimony as he gets ready to sit there at the table along with his wife Ashley, who to you, Martha, is very genuine about the pain that this has caused not only her family but specifically her two kids.
I think etched all over their faces. You can see the stress that they've been under with all of this. He is about to give his opening statement, and I think we should just listen in and listen.
Judge Kavanaugh, we welcome you. Are you ready? I have something I want to clear up from the last meeting that doesn't affect you. So before I swear you, I would like to explain my response to Senator Kennedy right after the break. At that time, I entered into the record the statements of 3 witnesses Dr. Ford said were also at the party These statements were provided to us under penalty of felony by lying to, if you lie to Congress. As soon as my team learned the names of these 3 potential witnesses, we immediately reached out to them requesting an interview. In response, all 3 submitted statements to us denying any knowledge of the gathering Dr. Ford described. If we had calls with them, we would have invited the minority to join. Every time that we've received any information regarding Judge Kavanugh, we've sought to immediately follow through and investigate. The minority staff sat on Dr. Ford's letter for weeks, and staff told us that they believed it is, quote, highly inappropriate to have these follow-up calls before the FBI finishes its investigation, end quote, even though the FBI had completed its background information. When we followed up with Judge Kavanugh after we received Dr. Ford's allegations, the ranking member staff didn't join us, even though these calls are usually done on a bipartisan basis. They joined other calls with the judge, but they didn't participate or ask any questions. Would you please rise, sir?
Yes.
Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yeah. And like we offered to Senator, or to Dr. Ford, you can take whatever time you want now for your opening statement. Then we'll go to questions, so proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Feinstein, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to make my statement. I wrote it myself yesterday afternoon and evening. No one has seen a draft or it except for one of my former law clerks. This is my statement. Less than 2 weeks ago, Dr. Ford publicly accused me of committing wrongdoing at an event more than 36 years ago when we were both in high school. I denied the allegation immediately, categorically, and unequivocally. All 4 people allegedly at the event, including Dr. Ford's longtime friend, Ms. Kaiser, have said they recall no such event. Her longtime friend, Ms. Kaiser, said under penalty of felony that she does not know me and does not believe she ever saw me at a party ever. Here's the quote from Ms. Kaiser's attorney's letter. Quote, simply put, Ms. Kaiser does not know Mr. Kavanugh, and she has no recollection of ever being at a party or gathering where he was present, with or without Dr. Ford. End quote. Think about that fact. The day after the allegation appeared, I told this committee that I wanted a hearing as soon as possible to clear my name. I demanded a hearing for the very next day. Unfortunately, it took the committee 10 days to get to this hearing. In those 10 long days, as was predictable, and as I predicted, my family and my name have been totally and permanently destroyed by vicious and false additional accusations. The 10-day delay has been harmful to me and my family, to the Supreme Court, and to the country. When this allegation first arose, I welcomed any kind of investigation, Senate, FBI, or otherwise. The committee now has conducted a thorough investigation, and I've cooperated fully. I know that any kind of investigation, Senate, FBI, Montgomery County Police, whatever, will clear me. Listen to the people I know. Listen to the people who've known me my whole life. Listen to the people I've grown up with and worked with and played with and coached with and dated and taught and gone to games with and had beers with. And listen to the witnesses who allegedly were at this event 36 years ago. Listen to Miss Kaiser. She does not know me. I was not at the party described by Dr. Ford. This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. The Constitution gives the Senate an important role in the confirmation process, but you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy. Since my nomination in July, there's been a frenzy on the left to come up with something, anything, to block my confirmation. Shortly after I was nominated, the Democratic Senate leader said he would, quote, oppose me with everything he's got. A Democratic senator on this committee publicly referred to me as evil. Evil. Think about that word. And said that those who supported me were, quote, complicit in evil. Another Democratic senator on this committee said, quote, Judge Kavanugh is your worst nightmare. A former head of the Democratic National Committee said, quote, Judge Kavanugh will threaten the lives of millions of Americans for decades to come. I understand the passions of the moment, but I would say to those senators, your words have meaning. Millions of Americans listened carefully to you. Given comments like those, is it any surprise that people have been willing to do anything, to make any physical threat against my family, to send any violent email to my wife, to make any kind of allegation against me and against my friends, to blow me up and take me down? You sowed the wind. For decades to come, I fear that the whole country will reap the whirlwind. The behavior of several of the Democratic members of this committee at my hearing a few weeks ago was an embarrassment. But at least it was just a good old-fashioned attempt at borking. Those efforts didn't work. When I did at least okay enough at the hearings that it looked like I might actually get confirmed, a new tactic was needed. Some of you were lying in wait and had it ready. This first allegation was held in secret for weeks by a Democratic member of this committee and by staff. It would be needed only if you couldn't take me out on the merits. When it was needed, this allegation was unleashed and publicly deployed over Dr. Ford's wishes. And then, as no doubt was expected, if not planned, came a long series of false last-minute smears designed to scare me and drive me out of the process before any hearing occurred. Crazy stuff. Gangs, illegitimate children, fights on boats in Rhode Island. All nonsense, reported breathlessly and often uncritically by the media. This has destroyed my family and my good name. A good name built up through decades of very hard work and public service at the highest levels of the American government. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. The consequences will be with us for decades. This grotesque and coordinated character assassination will dissuade competent and good people of all political persuasions from serving our country. And as we all know, in the United States political system of the early 2000s, what goes around comes around. I am an optimistic guy. I always try to be on the sunrise side of the mountain, to be optimistic about the day that is coming. But today, I have to say that I fear for the future. Last time I was here, I told this committee that a federal judge must be independent, not swayed by public or political pressure. I said I was such a judge, and I am. I will not be intimidated into withdrawing from this process. You've tried hard. You've given it your all. No one can question your effort. But your coordinated and well-funded effort to destroy my good name and destroy my family will not drive me out. The vile threats of violence against my family will not drive me out. You may defeat me in the final vote, but you'll never get me to quit. Never. I'm here today to tell the truth. I've never sexually assaulted anyone. Not in high school, not in college, not ever. Sexual assault is horrific. One of my closest friends to this day is a woman who was sexually abused and who in the 1990s, when we were in our 30s, confided in me about the abuse and sought my advice. I was one of the only people she consulted. Allegations of sexual assault must always be taken seriously, always. Those who make allegations always deserve to be heard. At the same time, the person who is the subject of the allegations also deserves to be heard. Due process is a foundation of the American rule of law. Due process means listening to both sides. As I told you at my hearing 3 weeks ago, I'm the only child of Martha and Ed Kavanugh. They are here today. When I was 10, my mom went to law school, and as a lawyer, she worked hard and overcame barriers, including the workplace sexual harassment that so many women faced at the time and still face today. She became a trailblazer, one of Maryland's earliest women prosecutors and trial judges. She and my dad taught me the importance of equality and respect for all people, and she inspired me to be a lawyer and a judge. Last time I was here, I told you that when my mom was a prosecutor and I was in high school, she used to practice her closing arguments at the dining room table on my dad and me. As I told you, her trademark line was, "Use your common sense. What rings true? What rings false?" Her trademark line is a good reminder as we sit here today, some 36 years after the alleged event occurred, when there is no corroboration, and indeed it is refuted by the people allegedly there. After I have been in the public arena for 26 years without even a hint, a whiff of an allegation like this. And when my nomination to the Supreme Court was just about to be voted on at a time when I'm called evil by a Democratic member of this committee, while Democratic opponents of my nomination say people will die if I am confirmed. This onslaught of last-minute allegations does not ring true. I'm not questioning that Dr. Ford may have been sexually assaulted by some person in some place at some time. But I have never done this to her or to anyone. That's not who I am. It is not who I was. I am innocent of this charge. I intend no ill will to Dr. Ford and her family. The other night, Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers, and little Liza, all 10 years old, said to Ashley, "We should pray for the woman." It's a lot of wisdom from a 10-year-old. We mean no ill will. Let's start with my career. For the last 26 years, since 1992, I've served in many high-profile and sensitive government positions for which the FBI has investigated my background 6 separate times. 6 separate FBI background investigations over 26 years, all of them after the event alleged here. I have been in the public arena and under extreme public scrutiny for decades. In 1992, I worked for the Office of Solicitor General in the Department of Justice. In 1993, I clerked on the Supreme Court for Justice Anthony Kennedy. I spent 4 years in the Independent Counsel's Office during the 1990s. That office was the subject of enormous scrutiny from the media and the public. During 1998, the year of the impeachment of President Clinton, our office generally, and I personally, were in the middle of an intense national media and political spotlight. I and other leading members of Ken Starr's office were opposition researched from head to toe, from birth through the present day. Recall the people who were exposed that year of 1998 as having engaged in some sexual wrongdoing or indiscretions in their past. One person on the left even paid $1 million for people to report evidence of sexual wrongdoing, and it worked. Exposed some prominent people. Nothing about me. From 2001 to 2006, I worked for President George W. Bush in the White House. As staff secretary, I was by President Bush's side for 3 years and was entrusted with the nation's most sensitive secrets. I traveled on Air Force One all over the country and the world with President Bush. I went everywhere with him, from Texas to Pakistan, from Alaska to Australia, from Buckingham Palace to the Vatican. 3 years in the West Wing, 5.5 years in the White House. I was then nominated to be a judge on the DC Circuit. I was thoroughly vetted by the White House, the FBI, the American Bar Association, and this committee. I sat before this committee for 2 thorough confirmation hearings in 2004 and 2006. For the past 12 years leading up to my nomination for this job, I've served in a very public arena as a federal judge on what is often referred to as the second most important court in the country. I've handled some of the most significant and sensitive cases affecting the lives and liberties of the American people. I have been a good judge. And for this nomination, another FBI background investigation, another American Bar Association investigation, 31 hours of hearings, 65 senator meetings, 1,200 written questions, more than all previous Supreme Court nominees combined. Throughout that entire time, throughout my 53 years and 7 months on this earth until last week, no one ever accused me of any kind of sexual misconduct. No one, ever. A lifetime of public service and a lifetime of high-profile public service at the highest levels of American government. And never a hint of anything of this kind. And that's because nothing of this kind ever happened. Second, let's turn to specifics. I categorically and unequivocally deny the allegation against me by Dr. Ford. I never had any sexual or physical encounter of any kind with Dr. Ford. I never attended a gathering like the one Dr. Ford describes in her allegation. I've never sexually assaulted Dr. Ford or anyone. Again, I am not questioning that Dr. Ford may have been sexually assaulted by some person in some place at some time. But I've never done that to her or to anyone. Dr. Ford's allegation stems from a party that she alleges occurred during the summer of 1982, 36 years ago. I was 17 years old between my junior and senior years of high school at Georgetown Prep, a rigorous all-boys Catholic Jesuit high school in Rockville, Maryland. When my friends and I spent time together at parties on weekends, it was usually with friends from nearby Catholic all-girls high schools: Stone Ridge, Holy Child, Visitation, Immaculata, Holy Cross. Dr. Ford did not attend one of those schools. She attended an independent private school named Holton Arms, and she was a year behind me. She and I did not travel in the same social circles. It is possible that we met at some point at some events, although I do not recall that. To repeat, all of the people identified by Dr. Ford as being present at the party have said they do not remember any such party ever happening. Importantly, her friend, Ms. Kaiser, has not only denied knowledge of the party. Ms. Kaiser said under penalty of felony, she does not know me, does not recall ever being at a party with me ever. And my two male friends who were allegedly there, who knew me well, have told this committee under penalty of felony that they do not recall any such party and that I never did or would do anything like this. Dr. Ford's allegation is not merely uncorroborated. It is refuted by the very people she says were there, including by a longtime friend of hers. Refuted. Third, Dr. Ford has said that this event occurred at a house near Columbia Country Club, which is at the corner of Connecticut Avenue and East-West Highway in Chevy Chase, Maryland. In her letter to Senator Feinstein, she said that there were 4 other people at the house, but none of those people nor I lived near Columbia Country Club. As of the summer of 1982, Dr. Ford was 15 and could not drive yet, and she did not live near Columbia Country Club. She says confidently that she had 1 beer at the party, but she does not say how she got to the house in question, or how she got home, or whose house it was. Fourth, I've submitted to this committee detailed calendars recording my activities in the summer of 1982. Why did I keep calendars? My dad started keeping detailed calendars of his life in 1978. He did so as both a calendar and a diary. He's a very organized guy, to put it mildly. Christmas time, we sit around and he regales us with old stories. Old milestones, old weddings, old events from his calendars. In 9th grade, in 9th grade in 1980, I started keeping calendars of my own. For me also, it's both a calendar and a diary. I've kept such calendars, diaries for the last 38 years. Mine are not as good as my dad's in some years. And when I was a kid, the calendars are about what you would expect from a kid. Some goofy parts, some embarrassing parts. But I did have the summer of 1982 documented pretty well. The event described by Dr. Ford presumably happened on a weekend, because I believe everyone worked and had jobs in the summers. And in any event, a drunken early evening event of the kind she describes presumably happened on a weekend. If it was a weekend, my calendars show that I was out of town almost every weekend night before football training camp started in late August. The only weekend nights that I was in DC were Friday, June 4, when I was with my dad at a pro golf tournament. And had my high school achievement test at 8:30 the next morning. I also was in DC on Saturday night, August 7th, but I was at a small gathering at Becky's house in Rockville with Matt, Denise, Lori, and Jenny. Their names are all listed on my calendar. I won't use their last names here. And then on the weekend of August 20 to 22nd, I was staying at the Garretts with Pat and Chris as we did final preparations for football training camp that began on Sunday the 22nd. As the calendars confirm, that weekend before a brutal football training camp schedule was no time for parties. So let me emphasize this point. If the party described by Dr. Ford happened in the summer of 1982 on a weekend night, my calendar shows all but definitively that I was not there. During the weekdays in the summer of 1982, as you can see, I was out of town for 2 weeks of the summer for a trip to the beach with friends and at the legendary 5-star basketball camp in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. When I was in town, I spent much of my time working out, lifting weights, playing basketball, or hanging out and having some beers with friends as we talked about life and football and school and girls. Some have noticed that I didn't have church on Sundays on my calendars. I also didn't list brushing my teeth. And for me, going to church on Sundays was like brushing my teeth. Automatic. Still is. In the summer of 1981, I had worked construction. In the summer of 1982, my job was cutting lawns. I had my own business of sorts. You see some specifics about the lawn cutting listed on the August calendar page. When I had to time the last lawn cuttings of the summer of various lawns before football training camp. I played in a lot of summer league basketball games for the Georgetown prep team at night at Blair High School in Silver Spring. Many nights I worked out with other guys at Tobin's house. He was the great quarterback on our football team, and his dad ran workouts or lifted weights at Georgetown Prep in preparation for the football season. I attended and watched many sporting events, as is my habit to this day. The calendars show a few weekday gatherings at friends' houses after a workout or just to meet up and have some beers. But none of those gatherings included the group of people that Dr. Ford has identified. And as my calendars show, I was very precise about listing who was there. Very precise. And keep in mind, my calendars also were diaries of sorts, forward-looking and backward-looking, just like my dad's. You can see, for example, that I crossed out missed workouts and the canceled doctor's appointments, and that I listed the precise people who had shown up for certain events. The calendars are obviously not dispositive on their own, but they are another piece of evidence in the mix for you to consider. Fifth, Dr. Ford's allegation is radically inconsistent with my record and my character from my youth to the present day. As students at an all-boys Catholic Jesuit school, many of us became friends and remain friends to this day with students at local Catholic all-girls schools. One feature of my life that has remained true to the present day is that I've always had a lot of close female friends. I'm not talking about girlfriends. I'm talking about friends who are women. That started in high school. Maybe it was because I'm an only child and had no sisters. But anyway, we had no social media or text or email, and we talked on the phone. I remember talking almost every night, it seemed, to my friends Amy or Julie. Or Kristen, or Karen, or Suzanne, or Maura, or Megan, or Nikki. The list goes on. Friends for a lifetime, built on a foundation of talking through school and life, starting at age 14. Several of those great women are in the seats right behind me today. My friends and I sometimes got together and had parties on weekends. The drinking age was 18 in Maryland for most of my time in high school, and was 18 in DC for all of my time in high school. I drank beer with my friends. Almost everyone did. Sometimes I had too many beers. Sometimes others did. I liked beer. I still like beer. But I did not drink beer to the point of blacking out, and I never sexually assaulted anyone. There is a bright line between drinking beer, which I gladly do, and which I fully embrace, and sexually assaulting someone, which is a violent crime. If every American who drinks beer, or every American who drank beer in high school, is suddenly presumed guilty of sexual assault, we'll be in an ugly new place in this country. I never committed sexual assault. As high school students, we sometimes did goofy or stupid things. I doubt we are alone in looking back at high school and cringing at some things. For one thing, our yearbook was a disaster. I think some editors and students wanted the yearbook to be some combination of Animal House, Caddyshack, and Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which were all recent movies at that time. Many of us went along in the yearbook to the point of absurdity. This past week, my friends and I have cringed. When we read about it and talked to each other. One thing in particular we're sad about. One of our good female friends who we would admire and went to dances with had her name used on the yearbook page with the term alumnus. That yearbook reference was clumsily intended to show affection and that she was one of us. But in this circus, the media has interpreted the term as related to sex. It was not related to sex. It's the woman herself noted to the media on the record. She and I never had any sexual interaction at all. I'm so sorry to her for that yearbook reference. This may sound a bit trivial, given all that we're here for, but one thing I want to try to make sure of in the future is my friendship with her. She was and is a great person. As to sex, this is not a topic I ever imagined would come up at a judicial confirmation hearing, but I want to give you a full picture of who I was I never had sexual intercourse or anything close to it during high school or for many years after that. In some crowds, I was probably a little outwardly shy about my inexperience. Tried to hide that. At the same time, I was also inwardly proud of it. For me and the girls who I was friends with, that lack of majoring in high school, faith and respect and caution. The committee has a letter from 65 women who knew me in high school. They said that I always treated them with dignity and respect. That letter came together in one night, 35 years after graduation, while a sexual assault allegation was pending against me in a very fraught and public situation where they knew they'd be vilified if they defended me. Think about that. They put themselves on the line for me. Those are some awesome women. I love all of them. You also have a letter from women who knew me in college. Most were varsity athletes. And they described that I treated them as friends and equals and supported them in their sports at a time when women's sports was emerging in the wake of Title IX. I thank all of them for all their texts and their emails and their support. One of those women friends from college, a self-described liberal and feminist, sent me a text last night that said, quote, "Deep breaths. You're a good man, a good man, a good man." A text yesterday from another of those women friends from college said, quote, "Brett, be strong. Pulling for you to my core." A third text yesterday from yet another of those women I'm friends with from college said, "I'm holding you in the light of God." As I said in my opening statement the last time I was with you, cherish your friends, look out for your friends, lift up your friends, love your friends. I felt that love more over the last 2 weeks than I ever have in my life. I thank all my friends. I love all my friends.
Thanks for watching. Please like